Bring in show music, please.
This is Squawk Pod from CNBC. I'm producer Cameron Costa, and on today's episode, making sense of the markets. It's not a turnaround after a huge market sell-off.
We don't know what the front end of a recession looks like, and we don't know if that's what this is.
And it may not be.
Author of Black Swan, Nassim Taleb, how he is thinking through the plunge, the Fed, and our bigger economic issues.
The problem is not the drop in the market. The problem is the structure of what we have. Everyone knows we have a lot of debt, and nobody's doing anything about it.
And Google has lost an historic antitrust battle, how the decision affects the rest of Silicon Valley, and whether it even matters to the public if Google has a monopoly on search. Former SEC Chair Jay Clayton.
That's something that the judge has to deal with, the fact that consumers may just like this.
Plus, Kamala Harris, now the official Democratic presidential nominee. And she's got a running mate. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz beat out Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro.
Shapiro would certainly make her look like she's trying to lean more moderate, Walz more progressive.
It's Tuesday, August 6th, and Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Andrew by in 3, 2, 1. Cue Andrew.
Good morning and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live at the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin along with Joe Kernan. Becky's off today.
It's day 2 of this volatile market week, and it's not quite a turnaround, but it is a lot better than the carnage that kicked off the week. On Monday, the Dow lost more than 1,000 points. Before market open on Tuesday, the Dow was down over 5% in just the last 3 sessions. The S&P 500 down 6% over the same time span, down more than 8% from its record high. And the tech-heavy NASDAQ landed firmly in correction territory. Heading into Tuesday's session, it was down more than 13% from its recent all-time high. Last week, the NASDAQ fell 3.4%, closing out its worst 3-week stretch in 2 years. And then it lost another 3.4% on Monday. Amazon, Alphabet, and Microsoft raised a few concerns in their latest financial reports, and Apple stock fell 5% after Berkshire Hathaway disclosed that Warren Buffett slashed his stake in the company by nearly half. Let's get back to Joe and Andrew.
Overnight, a big rebound, which might be helping what we're seeing in the futures this morning. In Tokyo, the Nikkei gaining just over 10%. That's its largest daily gain since October of 2008, after having its worst day since 1987, the day before. Monday, the Nikkei losing more than 12%. And we talked about the crash of 87 over there. If you remember, we had our own crash.
I was watching. I was there holding Klein's hands. It was not a great day. And then an earthquake was like a week later in Los Angeles. But turnaround in Japan, I don't know if I'd call it a turnaround Tuesday here. We'll see whether
the question is, are we stabilizing?
I know. Maybe it's a stabilized Tuesday. It's a turnaround Tuesday in Japan. If you rebound from down 12 to up 10.
And so the whole thing was, look, it seems like that was just a carry trade that got unwound. And that might be, the question is it that or was it something else? And then the mechanics of the system did seem to work for the most part, minus some of these online systems that seem to fail. That's a whole different issue.
But what causes the carry trade to go away is the underlying problem that everybody's worried about.
But the question is the underlying problem, a confidence problem in the jobs and the growth of the country is this problem?
We don't know what the front end of a recession looks like.
And that's the question.
And we don't know if that's what this is.
And it may not be. That's where I was going with it. It may not be.
It may not be, or it might be. But if it is, you want out. And, Warren, he doesn't like to sit around in stocks that go down. He just doesn't. He's got a lot left, obviously, but that was a pretty, I would say that's indicative of someone that doesn't feel.
So I actually think the Warren piece was a bigger piece than people giving it credit for. I think that was weighing on people's confidence yesterday in the U.S.
If you believe he's still got it, which I'm sure he does because he's been doing it for so long, and he can either hold a lot of equity, a lot of stock, or he can loosen up. Right. And selling half of your Apple is definitely.
But I will say this, and I think he would say this. as he's gotten older, he's become even more and more and more conservative about things.
Probably, yeah.
That happened during the pandemic, with
Happens to
airlines
everybody.
and everything else. Check this out, though, because I think this is going to have a huge impact ultimately on potentially Alphabet, but maybe even more broadly the rest of Silicon Valley. Shares of Alphabet this morning, they're actually up marginally. The mega cap stock getting caught up in the sell-off. Then more news late in the day, and it is this. A federal judge ruling that Google had illegally held a monopoly in 2 market areas, search and text advertising. It is a landmark case from the government. It was filed back in 2020. It alleged that Google had kept its share of the general search market by creating strong barriers to entry and a feedback loop that sustained its dominance. Now, the court found that Google violated what's called Section 2 of the Sherman Act. It effectively outlaws monopolies, the ruling marking the first anti-monopoly decision against a tech company in decades. And what we don't know is effectively how the judge is going to rule in terms of what is the remedy. Is there a behavioral remedy? Is there a breakup remedy? What does that even mean? We've talked for a long time about the fact that they pay these guys, Apple, so there can be knock-on effects. They pay Apple an enormous amount of money for the right to effectively be the default search. Do they say, no mas, we can't allow that anymore? Can you not sell other things like that?
Google says that the judge found that it's the best search engine.
I know.
So, okay.
It is the best search engine.
What court are we talking about, and how many? Where do we go from here in terms of
of appeals? This is going to go on for years.
That's what I mean, because to me it just looked like, okay, let's say you get, I don't know who appointed this judge. I don't know anything about him. How he's ruled before. Is he a normal pro-business type person? Is he someone who is maybe way left, doesn't like business, doesn't like monopolies, doesn't like,
Right.
So it's just weird to me that one guy or lady.
Well, that's why there's a system, and then you go to the
right.
appeals
Well,
court,
okay.
and you
So
go to
what's
the appeals
next?
court,
And
the
then
appeals court.
there's at least one more, and then eventually you figure the Supreme Court, right?
You could go to the Supreme Court.
Right. And it's going to take a while, but isn't it weird to you that this is the way we do things? That if one guy has an axe to grind, he can basically throw a wrench in the works of one of the greatest companies ever to come out of Silicon Valley?
Would you prefer to have a jury trial?
Maybe not. I prefer to.
What are you
I would prefer to
recommending?
take it to the next guy who may have been appointed by a Republican. I don't know. I don't know whether this guy was appointed
I don't
by
think
a
it should be
Democrat.
about. I mean, look. I think there's going to be in the same. Okay, hold on. If you're willing to concede that, hold on. If you are willing to concede that these judges are political, then you should also be willing to concede when I've made arguments around the Supreme Court
is political.
that it's very complicated, and the fact that the Supreme Court is now as stacked as it is. That is.
I'm admitting it's political. I just wish it was the other side that had decided on this one. See, I'm biased in favor of letting, we always are. I think Lena Khan's out of her mind. And I'm biased for letting things sort out.
I think Lena Khan's out of her mind. I think Lena Khan is trying to look at the antitrust system in a way that's different than it has been looked at in the last 30 years, but not actually in the last 100 years.
But people on both sides.
And the question is whether.
She's a very controversial figure.
Very, very controversial. I don't know
whether it's good or bad for business and commerce in the United States, how she's ruling. And the same thing goes with this. I'm not sure that I have a sort of, I'm predisposed to think to let these things fall where they may. We got great companies, let them operate.
To me, the thing is that we're fighting, the government is fighting yesterday's war, because the truth is that now that you have OpenAI doing their own search product, and you have Perplexity doing a search product, and all of these guys who everyone thought that nobody could emerge, it now appears that actually they can emerge. So this might be, like everything, a fight that should have happened if it was going to happen a long time ago.
Kamala Harris is now officially the Democratic presidential nominee. And after our show wrapped its broadcast today, she announced her running mate. In the last 24 hours, VP Harris had narrowed it down to 2 governors, Pennsylvania's Josh Shapiro and Minnesota's Tim Walz. She chose Tim Walz, But there are major differences between those two choices, and the Walz pick tells us a lot about her campaign and her policy strategy. Before the news broke, CNBC's Megan Cassella swung by the NASDAQ set to join Joe and Andrew. Together, they broke down the pros and cons of each option for different voter demographics.
These are two men who are sort of on opposite sides of the Democratic spectrum. Governor Tim Walz campaigned as a moderate, but then once he had a Democratic legislature in Minnesota, we were just talking through some of this, he started endorsing a lot of progressive policies and getting a lot of things done. It was $1 billion for affordable housing. It was tax credits for low-income parents, a lot of spending on childcare, free school meals. And then beyond economic policy, it was sort of a progressive policy laboratory in Minnesota over the past years.
Free college tuition for some people too.
Some credits as well, ways to make it more affordable. So he's definitely on that progressive side of the spectrum. Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, much more moderate. Did things like he's trying to slash corporate taxes in Pennsylvania, cut red tape. He wants to pull businesses in there. He's sort of been friendly with the oil and gas industry as governor. So when she's looking at this ticket, she's looking at who will help her electorally. And if she's focused on where these policy agendas are going to go, Shapiro would certainly make her look like she's trying to lean more moderate, Walz more progressive.
If I could guarantee Pennsylvania and give the perception that I was moving to the center, which everyone thinks she should do. I mean, she has said she's going to ban fracking. He obviously didn't like that. He didn't even like the LNG legislation, I think. So he's on the record. For me, it would be an easy choice. I would not move. Because I wouldn't pick Bernie's guy. I would not pick Bernie's guy. Yeah.
If it was Shapiro, which sounds like you think is
I think it's going to be him, and that. No, I'm not saying I'd like it. In fact, I worry because I think he'd be more formidable than Walz.
Right, because you want.
Well,
Trump
I don't know who I want.
My point is, it's not like if Shapiro was selected, you're changing.
I'm telling you. No, I'm telling you. No. I'm telling you.
That's my point.
I'm telling you, the right probably fears Shapiro more than Walz. I just think objectively, you can say that if she does want to try to win, her past positions have been way too far left and out of the mainstream. And you can get the criticism she's a San Francisco liberal. If I were
I understand.
whoever's
but you're not voting for
David
no matter
Plouffe,
what.
David Plouffe, I voted for Jimmy Carter, okay? I have voted for a Democrat, all right? If David Plouffe once, Jimmy Carter once, David Plouffe, this is not like when I wanted Joe Biden to stay in. This is not the same thing. I'm honestly telling you that if I were...
So now you're admitting that when you wanted Joe Biden to stay in.
Absolutely. Right. Well, that's the most poorly kept secret in the world, why everyone wanted Joe Biden to stay in. My God. I mean, you put Kamala Harris in, the most unpopular vice president in history, and she's suddenly a rock star, the greatest politician ever. Yeah, someone besides Biden was what Democrats needed.
There was a lot of thinking that Shapiro would pull these moderates to the ticket, but to Andrew's point, there aren't a lot of Republicans who support Trump who would change their vote no matter what they're actually.
They never would have.
So it's just the independents, and I do think they think that Walz has some endearing qualities. He's from the Midwest. He grew up, out there. He's got this rural background, former school teacher. He's a hunter, a gun owner. Even though he has also expanded some gun restrictions, he's sort of done this from this common sense approach, and he has this sort of folksy, plain-spoken way of speaking. And so people think, he shows up in his baseball cap at a school gym.
If you have any influence,
that might win folks over despite his record.
Move to the center. If you have any influence with anybody, the bat.
I thought you would think of moving to the center is bad for Trump.
I'm telling you. I'm being honest with you. This is what, if you're Kamala Harris and you want a shot here, and you really do want to win, she needs to move to the center. You've read her position. She wants to get rid of ICE. She wants to defund the police. She wants to ban fracking.
She does not want these things that you're saying she wants to do. She does not want to do. She does not want to defund the police.
Then she's changed. She has said that in the past. You've seen the videos, haven't you? I have seen the videos.
You have seen video. The problem is the people slice and dice these videos in 100 different ways. There are things that she has said, by the way. I absolutely agree. You go back and you look and
I'm glad you do, because there's no question.
Some of those things up.
Clean them up.
If those are the things
she believes in. You don't have to clean it. There's a lot of people that believe in those things.
She's moved quite to the center since she started.
I haven't heard her say anything because she hasn't answered any questions from anyone. She hasn't done anything off a teleprompter.
That's not true. I interviewed her last year for an hour.
Talking about since she became the nominee.
She's only been the nominee for about 12 hours, but in the race for
Okay,
16 days.
we know for 16 days, and she hasn't done anything extemporaneously, nothing yet. So we'll see. We'll see how all that plays out. And we'll see if she really hit. We'll see what she says about fracking now. What were some of the other things? Universal health care. You've seen that. No more private insurance.
I've seen it.
It's all on the record. It's not made up.
I agree. And then the question is, when she changes her view and she goes to the center, you're going to say she's a flip-flopper. So let's just see how it all goes.
Cheese will be next.
Coming up, making sense of the market's moves and global economic risks with Black Swan author and mathematical statistician Nassim Taleb.
Once you raise rates, you got to pay back for all your sins.
Die is cast.
30 years of sins. There's no such thing as free money.
Squawk Pod will be right back. You're listening to Squawk Pod from CNBC today with Joe Kernan and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Up and Andrew, Q.
Joining us right now on the set here to talk about the market sell-off of the last few days is a special guest, Nassim Taleb, distinguished scientific advisor at Universa Investments, and of course the author of The Black Swan. It's great to see you. I think we're all trying to understand whether what we saw yesterday was the beginning of a black swan or not.
Okay, so first, yesterday, I got this call from my long-term business partner, Mark Spitznagel, 25 years of working with tail events. He said, this black swan? And I was, first of all, the probability of not having a down 3% day, okay, the probability of not having one is
So
what
this
you
is
got to
nothing to
consider.
you.
1.3% of the time, and almost most years, the majority of years, have a 3% down.
Right.
So it's not. What is the black swan? What's the
Combined
black
with
swan?
last week and the Nikkei, though. The Nikkei down 12.
The Nikkei is a different situation, and let's talk about it separately. But let me finish there. So what's the black swan? A very large, impactful deviation that was not large nor particularly impactful, and two, completely outside the realm of expectation. This is the absence of the 3% or more drop in a two-year period is a black swan.
What does this portend in your mind? And are you anxious at all, or should we be worried? I think there's a lot of questions about whether the Fed's going to have to act.
We have to be worried about a bunch of things. We have to be worried, but and now let's talk about the Nikkei. We have Japan. They did zero interest rate policy, near zero interest rate policy, and then they had the quantitative easing. 23 years quantitative easing, 30 years of near zero interest rates. Okay? And a lot of people who thought that this method, all right, would help things, stabilize, thought they were vindicated.
Right.
And now we realize that once you raise rates, you got to pay back for all your sins.
The die is cast.
30 years of sins,
Yep.
you got to pay for. So really, I mean, there's no such thing as free money.
Yeah.
You cannot cure a structural problem with a monetary policy no more than you can cure cancer with a painkiller. You see, it's a painkiller you're going to put at some point. It's going to wear off. So we have a problem, and that problem is debt. The first time we got on CNBC, we started talking about debt, you and I, 15 years ago.
Probably.
On CNBC or elsewhere. Yeah. So this problem is debt, and let's see where it matters. Japan has a lot of debt, no growth. That's the problem, okay? And then they're patching it up. That's what you have to handle. And then, of course, a population problem, an aging problem, which worsens it. So you have Europe, less debt, but no growth.
Right.
Okay? Last 15 years sideways, right? That's a problem. The U.S., about the same, a little more debt than Europe, depends on the country. Some growth, okay?
Right.
And then, of course, China, debt, a lot of growth, okay?
Slowing in both cases, though.
They slow down and everything, but they're still ahead of. So here, the worst case, of course, is Japan. You don't want to be Japan. So it will drag us, of course, because we're all connected. Japan may be less connected than Europe, to us, to the economy, less impactful, but still. So we have a problem, but now we have to worry about the debt. The debt, how can it cripple us? You realize that once we had to raise rates, we'll start having the bills, and then you pay interest on interest. And now, what percentage of the budget is debt servicing?
Right.
It's growing.
Right.
Okay.
Maybe the lion's share. I guess so that's scary.
Yeah, that is scary. So we have to worry about that. So there's
But
so
other
long
thing-
that this hangs over us, okay, we got a problem, okay, and this is going to cause turmoil. There'll be winners, there'll be losers, but that's the source of fragility in the system that is like staring at us, and people don't talk about it.
Okay, so what would you do about that? Let's say you're the head of the Federal Reserve. You're Jay Powell. To the extent you have a
problem is-
lever, what do you do?
The thing is, it's not just Jay Powell. Jay Powell, he has a monetary policy in his hands. He can't do anything else, okay? That's his monetary policy. So we have you need to balance the budget, okay? Got to find ways to balance the budget. It's not his job.
Right.
And the problem is, every time you have, people run for, they talk about balanced budget, and guess what? We're going away from balanced budgets. The Republicans create deficits, the Democrats create deficits. That's the problem. The political
Everybody
system
says
is not
growth
adapted.
is the answer.
Sorry?
Everybody says growth is the only way out. And is AI? How about AI? How about technology?
Okay, so that's in the future, AI. Okay, that's like.
Are you a believer? Because the other thing we've watched is NVIDIA stock and Apple stock and Google stock. Everybody has gotten hit in the past couple of days where there's, Goldman Sachs came out with a report suggesting maybe we actually are in some kind of AI bubble.
The thing is, there's a difficulty here, and let me tell you the difficulty. Like, people talk about NVIDIA, right? And it is, they say, well, look how well it's doing. A lot of the rally in the S&P is caused by that stock. About what? A little more than a third.
Yeah,
of rally come from the stock. And but I don't know if you have a basement where you dump your old computers, but go look at the brands. The first portable computer was Osborne and went bankrupt. Yeah. Okay, the first Google, not the first search engine. We had Alta Vista.
Alta Vista, I forgot that.
It's like in the cemetery of ideas. So we have a situation here where people focus on a company because AI will win. Mm-hmm. It may help growth. I don't know if it will help growth or not. I don't know. You can't really speculate. But AI definitely has a lot of uses. But let me tell you, but it's not necessarily, all right, those companies that are doing AI today that will win. We saw that with car companies.
How will we know when the reckoning that we're not doing with debt becomes a problem? And that's why people worry about things that happened yesterday, because you know how dogs can tell when there's an earthquake coming? Aren't there pre-shocks or something? How do we know this isn't the beginning of something yesterday? How do you know we're not at the front of? You just don't think so.
First of all, you got to treat the situation as a. You can't say, you can't really make projections. You got to say the risk is there at all time.
Oh, I'd like to
have
people get out.
What can happen is a catalyst.
Yeah.
Okay. Can happen as just a catalyst, and catalyst is not a cause. All right. So you need days like yesterday to trigger a bigger one.
Right.
But the problem is not the drop in the market. The problem is the structure of what we have. Okay, everyone knows we have a lot of debt, and nobody's doing anything about it, and it's accumulating. Now about 120, 130% of GDP is starting to be a problem.
Yeah.
But by the way, I have something I want to mention.
Yes.
I want
to talk about Bitcoin. That's where I was going to go with
that.
No, one thing I want to say.
Don't point at me when you're talking.
It's a speculative thing.
Yeah.
And one point is Bitcoin proved once again that it's not a hedge against your assets melting.
Or against
it's
money printing, or it's just a speculative asset. It's like a NASDAQ.
It's a speculative asset that seems to, just like, behave like high-priced real estate in Manhattan,
right,
or to track the stock market.
Right. That may be true, but you're losing your ass from when you told me it was useless at 30,000.
I'm saying it's useless doesn't mean, there's a lot of things I didn't invest in.
All right.
There are a lot of things I didn't invest in that went up.
I want you to short it.
Went down.
Instead of just talking, I want you to short it or buy it. Do one or the other.
That's exactly the kind of false dichotomy that you're causing. I'm telling you, it's an asset that's crazy. Okay, of course, got enough crazy people to drive it up.
Do you think what do you think is going to happen to it long term, though?
I have no idea. First of all, I have no idea. It's a speculative asset. What I'm saying, it's not useful in economic system to have assets that go from $10 to $60,000. Okay, when we're looking for price stability,
like Netscape, it goes from 800
No,
to
but there's an underlying company that actually produces something that makes a product.
But on any given day, whatever it's worth is totally ephemeral. You have
That's
no
the problem.
idea.
Let me tell you the problem with Bitcoin people. They always
NVIDIA
change
went
the
from
game.
$6 to $400.
And it's revolutionizing the
NVIDIA
world.
Well, who knows whether Bitcoin's doing
NVIDIA,
that or
we're talking
not?
about
There's people
cash
that think
flows.
Bitcoin
But
is
it's
doing
not.
it. But people that think it is.
How so? It's become a speculative asset. That's what it is. That's the
But
product.
the product
is being a speculative
asset. It
asset.
has a functional use in terms of what constitutes a like actual money. It has a functional
That's exactly
Just like
what
gold.
you're getting wrong. It's proving that it can be anything, but it's not a currency and it's not a hedge. All right, so treat it as listen. A lot of people buy paintings.
What are the
expensive
What are the
paintings.
characteristics of, for example, of gold? It's immutable. It's cross-cultural.
First of all,
it's a limited supply. There's all these different things. It has a lot of those
gold
characteristics.
has a property that Bitcoin doesn't.
What, to
have.
make jewelry?
No. Let me. First of all, it has use as jewelry, but there's one property is that if you put it has a gold chain. If you put it on the ground for 10,000 years, it will still be gold. Bitcoin,
Right.
if the players in Bitcoin.
Right. If you
stop for
unplug
a
the
minute,
servers,
No,
you got
you
nothing.
can have it. You can own it. You can still have it. You don't need a server.
No, but
you
the
can
thing
have it
that
in your
keep
wallet.
being maintained. Okay, and this is complicated.
Well, the entire
attribute.
world
Plus,
is
there are
based
other
on
attributes.
something being
There-
plugged
there
in
are
at
other
this point.
attributes.
No, but gold
Number one,
isn't. Gold is not.
And gold held its value. It was stable up until the hunt, and until of course 73 when
No, but gold is
and then
stable. It's
accelerated with
worth
the hunt.
about what a barrel of. It's worth like a suit. It's worth a good suit. Apparently, over the years, you can buy a good suit of clothes for whatever gold costs.
But the idea of taking the story of gold and
No, the
making an
characteristics. There's
analogy
about
to
6 or
Bitcoin.
7 characteristics that Bitcoin shares with gold. And I mean, when I first.
our argument is not gonna. I've argued
In
with
the
a lot of
old days,
Bitcoin
if you
people
lived
and
on
never
an
went
island,
anywhere.
if you did an hour of work and you did one thing and somebody else did another thing, you need a way to keep track of your work. It's a distributed ledger which does that.
So it looks like
You could use
we're
shells,
not
but you
gonna
can't.
go anywhere
You
with the
have to.
argument. It is. It's
Well, the
been proved
world
to be a
is
currency.
actually you're kind of left in the dust. The world is coming around.
How many
to,
Bitcoin have you used today to buy your newspaper, your coffee, and
you,
and to
okay,
pay for
now
your,
you're using the use
Uber?
basis. Now you've moved from the
No, I
whether
am
it's
saying
gold
it's
or,
proving not to be a currency, and I'm proving, and it doesn't have the same attribute as gold as reserve of value. So maybe something else. I'm not complaining. A lot of people like crazy stuff. Okay,
It's
but
different
Just
than- it's
don't
not a
make
pet
it,
rock, Nassim.
Don't make it a well. It's not.
Well, in hindsight, we'll see, because you've up to this point, you don't admit that you've miscalculated on Bitcoin. You still think you're right. I know people who hated it at 5,000 that still think they're right, and they'll go to their graves thinking
Let me
that.
tell you, I myself told you about 3 or 4 visits.
Is it going to zero?
No. I myself told you. I
'Cause
told
it
you.
should, based on what
may
you're
go
saying,
to
it
a
should go-
million, it would still be a
Oh, well,
speculative
that's
item. I
that's
told you
brave.
that.
That's brave for
Could
you to
be.
say. Then short it.
Okay.
Short it if it's going to zero. Buy if it's going.
We got to run. This is a debate that will continue, as we know. Nassim, thank you for coming in this morning.
Thank you.
Next on Squawk Pod, taking a deeper look at the antitrust case against Google, whether the search giant is a monopoly and whether it matters, with former SEC Chair Jay Clayton.
I think it's fantastic that in America we have 4 companies that are throwing tons of capital and sprinting at this, and I should be really happy about it. I'd be worried if it was one company.
Welcome back to Squawk Pod.
You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC. I'm Joe Kernan, along with Andrew Ross Sorkin. Becky is off today. Join us now to discuss the recent market volatility, the Fed, and more. Let's welcome former SEC Chair Jay Clayton. He is now non-executive chair at Apollo and a CNBC contributor. Where do you want to start? You come when you come in, we always have like a kind of a buffet. of things. I don't know if there's a sneeze tray. I don't like buffets without sneeze trays. You know what I'm saying? On top, or sneeze shield. But
Fair enough.
Yeah. When the last 3 days, what have you said? Oh my God, I need to talk about this with Joe and Andrew. Anything?
Market function yesterday.
It wasn't great, was it?
No, I think.
But it worked.
I think it worked. And given that you had clearly a ton of forced selling, people were selling because they
margin calls,
because they had margin calls, because they had to fund things. And with that, globally, the market functioned well. I think that is good news. What else is good news? Our GSIBs, what we worried about in 2008 and the like. Clearly this was nothing to them. They can handle market volatility like this. You talk to the largest banks. This was not a problem for them. So those are very good things. One thing that we're hearing this morning, on this program, is the Fed. People are saying, what should the Fed be doing? My takeaway is, thank goodness we have an independent Fed. Right? You have all of these different pushes and pulls and the like, and in a political season, we're less than 100 days away from an election. I think what you're seeing.
Why have even the possibility of it not being independent? And we were just talking about that. Why not have a Taylor rule? Why not have a rules-based Fed instead of someone who could be swayed, someone who flies by the seat of the pants? We had someone thinks, Greenspan was this, Volcker was this, Janet Yellen was this, Bernanke was this. It wouldn't have to be dependent on one person leading 11 or 12 other people around. Why not rules?
Well, I don't think it's one person. I think Chair Powell.
It's a consensus thing, but they
does a pretty good job of building
along,
consensus.
typically.
Well, but maybe they follow along because they find a good spot. But why not have a rule?
Yeah.
Because the world changes. The financial world is very complex. I mean, why have a rule when you have what I would say is disciplined fiscal spending, and now I'm going out on a limb, as opposed to profligate fiscal spending? That's probably.
And look what happened.
It's probably a different context.
They stayed
right?
at zero and completely enabled the fiscal spending.
But now they've responded.
Yeah, and we're in the middle of responding, and we don't know how it's going to.
I'm going to defend the Fed here.
Okay.
We're all looking to the Fed to deal with this situation with the very blunt tool of interest rates.
Right.
When we have unprecedented fiscal spending, right? We have unprecedented supply shocks. We have volatility around the world. We have Europe, which is.
Do you think we would have had unprecedented fiscal spending if they had? That's not their place. Their place is whatever Congress does, they fund it. They shouldn't try to cut off the spigot.
I think that unfortunately, they're in reactionary mode as it goes to fiscal spending. That's where they've always been. That's how you stay independent.
Can we talk? Let's talk about. We can talk about Google. My point was it's just weird, and I don't know. We're finding out who appointed the judge. I'm not really going to say one way or the other that it's political, but it's one person that's deciding on. I don't know
That's
whether
how the
a
system
jury
works.
I know, but then there's also.
And by the way, I disagree oftentimes with judges, and then you go to
the next court.
And then you
what about this one? You think Google is just really good at what it does, or do you think it monopolizes?
Okay, I'll start with that.
Yeah.
When it's not I'll just speak personally. When it's not the browser that comes up, I switch to it.
Yeah,
because
me too.
My experience is it's just better.
Yeah.
So okay, and that's something that the judge has to deal with. The fact that consumers may just like this. What I thought was good about the opinion, I perused it quickly, is the judge did explain the thinking,
right,
in a pretty clear way. I think in these types of situations, what does the judge owe the parties, and what do they owe the appellate court? As much of a balanced view of how they viewed the law and the facts, so that the public can react, the appellate court can look at it, and the like.
What's next? I mean, is it a good precedent or a bad precedent for our tech industry, which is the best in the world?
I am all in on tech. I'm all in on tech, all in on America. It's one of our greatest advantages.
Yeah.
I think we have to be pretty careful about whether
light touch.
We're
not getting
But
there.
here's my question. My question is, are they fighting yesterday's war? Which is to say that Google has been the predominant search engine in the world, but now all of a sudden we're talking about Perplexity. We're talking about OpenAI doing its own search product. All of a sudden, Microsoft, which is partnered with OpenAI, is making a new run at making Bing, a meaningful player. I don't know if any of those things are going to succeed, but, if you look over 10, 20, 30 years at the top 10 companies in America in terms of market cap and revenue, they do switch.
They switch.
And that's something to be said about competition.
Innovation is a much better response than the government to these types of situations.
So having said that,
right, it's absolutely clear.
Having said that, and look,
and people would argue, but the government needs to be there to foster innovation.
Right.
Okay. Back to Joe's point, light touch, forward looking.
So here's the complicated part. I say to myself, if I'm Apple, I should absolutely be able to sell parts of my screen to whoever I want. Okay?
100%.
Okay. In this case, they sell it to Google. Because they sold it to Google has, and because they sold for a lot of money, by the way, not everybody has can afford the screen space, if you will. So the capital, if you will, all of a sudden has competitive value.
Yep.
So they get on this screen, and there's a feedback loop. And that's the part that I think we haven't really thought through from a competitive perspective.
I don't think this is that new. What brand does Macy's put in the storefront window?
Absolutely. No. But here's the question. What product do you know that gets put in the Macy's window and the product gets better because it's in the window? So the reason that the Google product is better,
the network effects,
is because more people are using it, and therefore it can train effectively better to actually send people to the right place in a way, frankly, that some of these others can't.
So
right, and that's a very interesting dynamic.
Is Apple supposed to say, "I'm sorry,
that's the point.
I can't put you up front"?
I agree with you.
Because it's too good a deal.
I've always defended Apple's right to do that. But then the question is, does Google not have the right to pay the money? It's a very interesting sort of philosophical, but not so philosophical, very practical issue. And from an antitrust, just if you're into antitrust, this one actually is closer to me in terms of like thinking through the sort of unique dynamics at play than some of the others.
I get it and when you are in a government position like that, high impact is something you always have to look at. And sure, it's a greater impact, but what does the consumer want?
And then the question is, what is the remedy? Do you believe in behavioral remedies?
I, as a consumer, love the search engine because it's so darn good.
Right.
And it's so darn good because so many people use it.
Do you believe in behavioral remedies, meaning that somehow the government oversees some part of the company as a result of a ruling like this if they were to continue to lose in an appeals court? Or do you subscribe to the philosophy that you need to break things up or split things off to serve the greater good?
So back to what you asked. We have this AI revolution that is forecast. That's where the government should be looking. Are people somehow taking what they have today and in the next step using their power today to segregate?
I'm surprised you'd say that, because I would take the opposite side. I would say right now AI is so early still in the game that I want all of these guys to be sprinting as hard as they can. And the second that I put up a hurdle in front of them in any way, I'm slowing down the game.
That's what I'm saying. Let's look at that market. We've had this conversation. Right. I think it's fantastic that in America we have 4 companies that are throwing tons of capital and sprinting at this, and I should be really happy about it. I'd be worried if it was one company.
You're very woke.
Are you worried that they're all the same companies, though? That's one of the things to think about.
Am I woke today?
You're very woke. You're woke. No, woke can be good. Woke can be eyes open. Can be eyes open. So don't take it.
We're going to use that in a commercial for Vice President Harris.
Yeah, exactly. Woke can be it can be a good thing for you. I don't want you to take it wrong.
Whatever you want to call me, Joe.
What I call you, well, just whatever I want to call you, as long as I call you, is all you care about. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Jay Clayton.
That's the podcast for today. Thank you for tuning in. Our TV show, Squawk Box, is hosted by Joe Kernan, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin, weekday mornings on CNBC starting at 6 Eastern. To get the smartest takes and analysis from that broadcast right into your ears, follow Squawk Pod wherever you're listening now. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow. Have a great day.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.